Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Gems of Life show. My name is Fadhwa. I am your host of the Gems of Life show. Today, I am actually super excited to have our guest on the show. Very unique, talented, special guest on the show. I know I always say I have a special guest on my show, on all my shows, but every show that I bring my guests, they are all special to me. On today's show, I have Dr. Mohamed Ahmed. He is the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at the Alliant International University. Welcome, Dr. Mohamed Ahmed. How are you today?
Thank you, Fadhwa. Thank you for the kind introduction, and I'm glad to be on. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for actually taking your time to come in and join our show. I actually had the honor of meeting you when I was co-hosting Love Bay show, Love Bay Radio Talk Show Radio. And I had the honor to be the co-host and be able to speak with you with Miss Jan too. And that's where we were introduced. So thank you for coming to my show.
Yeah, it's an honor to be here. We had a great conversation. It was fun to be on the Blue Sky show, and now I'm thrilled and honored to be here with you.
Well, Dr. Ahmed, I know you're going to share your story, and we're going to have more conversation throughout the show. And I just wanted to introduce you right now. Right now, you are actually, and I don't want to mess it up, you're the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, Alliant International University. Do you care to just share with us what that means? Because that title alone just shows who we got to take a step back and just know what that means actually.
Yes, thank you once again for having me on the show. My role as the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion is among the many things that I do in my professional career. And it's at Alliant International University. We're a university that is based here in San Diego, California, but have many campuses throughout the state of California, and we're expanding in other states as well. We also do have international campuses, and our most prestigious international campus is in Mexico City, where we have our medical university where we train Mexico's top doctors and surgeons. So Alliance International University consists of five different schools. It's a system, so I am the chief diversity officer for the entire system, and my role entails in making sure that our institution is the most equitable and diverse it could be. So I work with faculty, staff, the board of trustees, the university's leadership as I serve in the president's cabinet, making sure that we're looking at recruitment, retention, student success, how we're engaged in the community, how we're taking on issues in the larger society to make sure that we're building a generation of scholars that are positioned to elevate success and equity and diversity.
Wow. So education is something that you're very passionate about. This is where I say, because that's where your passion is. Do you care to just explain to our listeners and our viewers, how did it all begin? Because we are starting where you are right now, but you were never there. It takes time, it takes progress, it takes growth and challenges and obstacles as well. Do you just care to share with us? Is this something that you always wanted to do, Dr. Ahmed?
Um, you know, the type of I work in various different fields, and I've over the time I've learned to align them so they could all be connected and coordinated to sort of serve my mission. But working in education was really not something that I really thought about, or I wanted to have a career in. It all started, um, you know, growing up in my teens. I always wanted to work on a global stage, working with international NGOs, particularly the United Nations, doing a lot of humanitarian work, conflict resolution work. And I am still engaged in that. But the transition in working in education and working with students and working with communities that are really underserved and underrepresented in the field of education really began when I actually built a school in Somalia, and I've seen the need for education, the need for opportunity for our communities in this particular field. And from that point on, I've made sure that I've studied education. I've studied in how to work with students, how to work with administration, how to work in terms of policy as it regards to education. How do you lobby for educational initiatives? How do you put programming together? And as a diversity officer, was something that brought all of those skill sets together to be an advocate for education and equity.
You know, when you last time we met and you were talking on the radio, there was so many inspirational, conversational stuff that we actually talked about. And I can't help to see or wonder, how is that Dr. Ahmed, Mohamed Ahmed, a Somali from East Africa, from Somalia. Here we are, you are in the US, here I am, Somali. Both of us were immigrants. I'm in Canada, you're in the US, and how our paths have kind of crossed each other today. I don't even know where to begin, to be honest with you, because I am truly not only inspired, but truly believe that our young Somali men are more than capable than what they've always thought they could ever achieve. And to see you right now here, being able to talk about building a school in Somalia, advocating for education for students, making sure that they get the education, which is the basic human necessity. Education, it frees one's mind when we have the education. How is it that you are different from, because I'm curious, okay? I have worked with a lot of youth, and I know you have a passion for even working the NGO. And I know one of the things that in our community, the Somali community, or even African Black community, one of the issues and challenges that we often face is our youth. They're not as driven. They're not as focused like you did. Most of them kind of lost. They don't know where they're headed. Why do you think you're different? What are the things that attributed to your success today? Because I'm really curious to know that today.
Mm-hmm. I wouldn't say that I'm different. I think I would say probably I had a different strategy. Um, our young men and women in the Somali community, or the Black or African community, they're very ambitious, they're very driven, and they want to do better and to have careers that that make a difference for themselves and the communities that they live in. So I think the ambition is there, but I think there's a lack of resource. I think there is a lack of infrastructure for them to thrive. When you look at equity issues, communities don't typically, start off on the same foot. Um, it, it, you know, Parental support, household income, the type, where you live in the community, what school district you go to, really sort of, I wouldn't say determine, but they help shape the type of outcomes that you could potentially have. So as our communities are very ambitious, I think we are missing those important gaps that we're trying to figure out as a community. How are we able to fill that? Because we could only fill that ourselves. Do you have access to a mentor? Do you have access to a library? Do you have access to something even so basic as the internet? Do you have access to recreational activities, right? So these are the things that are missing in for our youth. and they help shape, the outcomes that they get, whether in school or looking for a career or whatever the case might be. So I don't think I am different. I think I kind of, worked hard in making sure that some of these things are not available to me in the community, and I need to find ways to find them myself. Um, it all starts in the household. Um, it's about the vision and the sort of the structure that our parents that work really hard, how they structure the house for their kids to understand what they can be, and how to get there. Now, my own parents did not speak English, did not know anything about the educational system, um, but they worked hard in making sure that I understand that they had a set of responsibilities, which was putting food on the table, putting a roof over my head, making sure that I'm fed, I'm clothed, and anything outside of that was really going to be my own hustle. And it was really going to be for me to be a go-getter, to find a way to get it done and not to complain, to really be resilient, and to create my own opportunities, I would say. So that was really what was driving me, understanding that my parents were already maxed out. They did what they could do to their own capacity. Um, and the rest was on my shoulders. So I had to find a way to get it done. And the way to get it done, honestly, is to be forward thinking, to be resilient in the sense that when you do have hiccups on the way, when you do fail, when you are disappointed, not to give up on the process, because it's a process, it's a journey. It is not something that is going to happen overnight.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Life is a process. Life is a process. And through that process, we're going to have hiccups, we're going to have challenges, and it's how we get up from it. It's what we do with it. You talk about the environment, the society, and even home, at home, the kind of support that we need. And often one of the complaints that I get from the young, from the youth, is that I don't have the support from my parents. They're not as encouraging. And one of the things that I realized is that for myself, I have an 18-year-old daughter, as you know, and a 12-year-old son. So the kind of conversation I have with them is very different from the conversation I had with my mother, with my parents, because it's a very different generation. There's a generation gap there. So I would not sit here and say, oh, my mother or my parents didn't give me the life I needed to have, so I could be the person I needed to be, right? Because it was a very different generation. The upbringing was different. The expectations were different. And this is one of the things that I find the youth really struggling with, the parents coming from back home, from Africa, and they're here, and the parents don't speak a word of English. It takes them maybe 10 years, 20 years to start learning the language. And it's the youth that are growing in the home, taking all the expectations, the responsibilities, and on top of that, they feel that they have failed because they're not performing the way they should, because they're still blaming the parents for not giving them that support. What advice would you give to those youth? Because I know this is something that is ongoing right now.
Yes, it is definitely a challenge. It is challenges that I personally myself experienced, and my peers as well. I think it really goes back to the generation gap, between, our parents, and the younger generation. There's a language barrier. Oftentimes, a lot of these, kids are going to school. They have friends that are speaking English in school. English is being spoken, and when they come back home, mom, dad, uncle, whatever, in the household, English is really not being spoken. So sometimes, many times, I've actually had parents that I had to translate between them and their kids, and it is a challenge. But I think, um, the generation gap is a lot more dire and severe than we expect, even beyond the language, capability. It is really the lifestyle, our parents lived back home, and the youth, the lifestyle that they have available to them here. There is a huge miscommunication there. Our Some parents in our communities want to instill the lifestyle that they live back home, which is just not feasible. It's not even imaginable in many ways. And sometimes they're a little bit more forceful. They shove it down the throats, and the kids are, that's what kind of breaks them in many ways. But at the same time, our youth, the type of life, sort of styles that are, whether it's available on social media, whether it's in pop culture, whatever, what is happening around their society, around their peers, in many ways could be unacceptable for our parents, because there is cultural values, there is religious values, there is traditional values that we must uphold as well. So I think it's on both sides, the parents and the youth. How do you strike that balance? We need to, parents need to give in a little bit, understanding that this is a new way of life, this is a new society, and they have to adjust in many ways. And for our youth, they also need to understand that there are certain things that are non-negotiable. Our religious values, our cultural heritage, the ability to speak our own language, our mother tongue, which is critical. So I think the blame goes on both sides, but at the end of the day, it is the parents' responsibility to help shape their child into um, something that is honorable, but at the same time, something that allows for their own kids to have the freedom with responsibility to navigate this new society that we're living. And it all comes back how how much time are our parents spending with kids. I'm talking about spending time that is valuable. Our parents, they're always complaining about, oh, he doesn't know about the culture, he doesn't know about this. Well, have you taken the time to teach them? Because if you did, they would be inspired and they would be hungry and eager to learn more. But if you haven't, how do you expect this kid to know all of this stuff? Because all of these stuff are taught. They're not, something, that they're inherently born with. So I think I think parents need to learn how to ways to assimilate. Communication is very important. The way that our grandparents communicated to their children, which our parents, is completely different to the type of communication that is acceptable in the society that we live in. Not only in the U.S., even back home, the communication styles is completely changing. So I think parents need to understand what is the best way to connect with their kids, and not just going with the status quo, because the status quo is gone. Every generation is different.
Yes, absolutely. I'm actually a living foolproof example how I let the old traditional way of communication um, take over to a point where now, for the past, I would say, 4 years since my transformational journey, learning about how I can not only use the inspiration to others, but also inspire my children and connect with them on a very emotional level. Because I truly believe one of the things that's really missing even in our community is the emotional connection. We never understood how powerful it can be to rebuild and have that stronger bond with your loved ones. But when it comes to communication, Dr. Ahmed, I have come to realize the power of communication. And I just discovered this less than a year ago. Okay, before I had the parent hat on, it's what I say goes. I gave birth to you. I carried you for 9 months. I had a C-section because of you, and you pull in the parent trap. It's the guilt, right? You want to use the guilt to hold your child for them to listen, but it doesn't work. And then we say, why are they not listening to us? I'll give you an example. Less than a year ago, I came to discover the power of communication. And this was a huge shift for me, completely shifted and transformed the relationship I have with my children right now. I remember one day I was talking to my daughter and she started working a year into it. I asked her, I said, oh, by the way, how much did you have? How much do you have saved up in your account? She's looking to get a car and she gave me an amount. My jaw dropped, literally. Not with good news, but bad news. I wasn't expecting the amount she told me. And what happens as a mother? I flipped, got upset. And I'm like, we're going to have this conversation. We're going to talk, and it took us 3 days before we met because our schedule, there was a conflict of time there. So for 3 days, I will be washing dishes and I'll be counting the days. You wait until I talk to her. You wait until I have a conversation with her. All the money she worked for went to Amazon. Yeah, she's been ordering things, going to Amazon. I'm telling you, I'll be cooking, Dr. Ahmed, I'll be cooking, cutting onions. I'll be crying because of the onions, but I'll be talking literally, you know, 3 days, 3 days. On day 3, I'm sitting down. It was the third day that we both were home. 2 o'clock, I'm watching something on TV on YouTube. It happened to be Gary Zukov video. If you haven't read his book, oh, amazing. The Seat of the Soul. I always tell people, game changer. So I was watching one of his videos and it's like a message. It felt like he was talking to me. And he says, anytime you're having a conversation, when you're communicating with someone, anytime you come with anger, it's coming from a place of pain. Anytime you are upset, you have anger and you're yelling or screaming, you're coming from a place of pain. So in order to transition from that place of pain to a place of compassion and kindness, you need to, instead of react, you need to respond. So sit down. So I'm thinking he's talking to me. So I was listening. I'm like, great timing because I'm just about to have a conversation with my daughter. And it was a game changer. That's when I realized that it wasn't the most empowering way for me to empower my daughter. Had I reacted the way I was reacting, I was creating a story. I was creating a movie in my head of the conversation that I was going to have with her. And after watching the video, shortly after that, I sat down and he gave steps on what you can do. So one is to set intention. Set your intention before you speak to someone, before you communicate with someone. Set your intention, and then have the end in mind. What is the objective that you're looking for? And I was like, I just want to empower her. I just want to inspire her. And that was it for me. I want to have a strong bond with my daughter. I don't want to break her heart. I don't want to break her spirit. And let me tell you, when I called her, I said, come here and sit down and let's talk. I could see literally she was scared to come and sit down because I didn't even realize, just the way I worked myself up for 3 days, I'm sure she was doing the same thing. She was anticipating the kind of conversation we were going to have. And she looked at me and I said, it's okay, honey, come sit down. We're going to have a chat. And she sees me smiling and she's like, what's wrong with you? What is going on? I'm like, it's okay, sit down. I want to let you know, I have set intention to help, support you, empower you. I'm not here to judge you. And that's the first thing I said to her. I said, let's sit down and talk, and it just felt like a weight, she felt more calmer, more relaxed, and we sat down and we talked. And by the end of the conversation, she looked at me and she said, thank you. Thank you for not making me feel worse than, and that's the moment I realized how easy it is to break one's spirit, how easy it is to break one's energy, just like that, So when you talk about communicating, and as I know Somalis particularly, we scream and yell and it's our nature and we think, oh, it's our nature. But no, we can change that. We have the ability to change that. And screaming and yelling is reacting. It's not resolving anything. I just thought I'll share this. And I always share this with anyone who talks about communicating. I bring it up because it takes me to a place where I know it's a place of empowerment.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And what kids do, they don't, when they mess up, it's not that they're doing it intentionally to hurt you or themselves or anyone. It's just that they don't know better. And how we as parents or elders, the type of communication either is that they fear us, right? Or they understand that they have a listening ear, a support structure. And oftentimes that's why youth, when they're dealing with issues that their parents should know about, they don't tell them. They go find other people, sometimes the wrong people that they share information with and get bad advice from. It's just because the approach to their mom and their dad can be hostile, and most of the time it is hostile and it is traumatizing for children. And one thing, we as Somali community is also not good at is earning the trust of our own kids,
Mhm.
and confidentiality. Um, if one kid gets an F in class, mom, dad would just openly just tell neighbors, "Oh, he had an F," you know,
Mhm.
um, shaming, that child in front of their peers, in front of other parents, in front of other, and typically sometimes you don't see this in other communities, right? So for that kid is not gonna have trust in that parent, understanding that there is no sensitivity towards their feeling, towards their emotions, and it's always a blame game. And it's all about the bonding. It's all about setting time. You could, for example, one advice that one of my mentors told me is that, hey, when you're playing with your kids, don't drop them off at the park. They'll have fun, but they won't have fun with you, and that's a different ball game, right?
Mhm.
So make time. If they're on the swings, if they're playing around, if they're playing basketball, whatever the case might be, make sure you're engaged with them, because when they're going home or when they're in their own space, they'll understand, oh, this is boring. I'd rather have so much fun playing ball with my dad, right? That's how you build that relationship. And I see that, especially during Eid or, holidays, or even on the weekends. I see a lot of fathers dropping their kids off at the park and saying, "Hey, call me when you guys are done." Um, and sometimes I just reflect. I'm like, because I've tried this. Because I have a son who's 4 years old, and when I play with him, it means so much more, even playing with other kids, because it engages them on a completely different level. So, and it builds trust. So as we come back to that conversation, is how do we inspire our youth? I think the basic steps is, do they have trust in you? Do they have confidence in you? Because if they don't, that's a missing gap, and it will reflect on their own mentality and their mindset.
Yes. You brought something really important, building trust, right? And they want to feel confident that you will be there to support them no matter what. They want to be confident knowing that even if they get the F, it's still okay for them. It's not okay that they got the F, but you're still there for them no matter what. And you'll be always there to support them and encourage them. One of the areas that I know some of the youth that I have spoken to is the comparison. And I know that's something a lot of youth have complained about. Even my daughter, one time, I stopped that actually habit of the comparing, and not comparing so much so with other children, but comparing myself, my childhood with our youth. And oftentimes, this is what I see in a lot of parents. They compare their childhood, how they used to do the things they used to do, expecting their children now, their youth, to be able to accomplish those things. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't. I think. I think it's not fair, when we compare children against other children, siblings against other siblings, because circumstances are different. Um, I think it hurts them emotionally, but also understanding there are a lot of things that we as Somali people do culturally that is just impossible to get rid of. It's just things that are not good, but has became normal to us. So, and that comparing is very true. I remember when I was, when I was applying for colleges, I would come home. Parents would be like, "So and so got their acceptance letters. Here's where they're going." Um, Even my own sibling, "Oh, he's studying biochemistry. Why are you studying, international security, or what are you going to do with that, or political science, right? So and so have this career, or so and so, or this person got this scholarship and you didn't." It's a deficit mindset, right? Um, it's a much more inspiring conversation when you sit down with that child and say, "Listen, here's what you're better than, where you're good at, then your brother is not good at. But your brother isn't good in these areas, and you need to, work on these areas as well. At least you said something positive to that particular child, that is empowering him in saying that he or she is good at that. So it's acknowledgement. When you're comparing someone to someone else, you're not acknowledging their humanity. You're not acknowledging what they're good at, what their strengths, and most importantly, what their interest, right? I'm not interested in becoming a doctor, right? It's something that I have no interest in. It doesn't excite me. I don't like this type of work, right? So we do see that in our community. We do see that in the household, at the masjid, in Duxi, and just anywhere that we're at. This kid, he's at this certain juz in Quran. You're not. So it's those comparisons continue to feed in to the lack of trust, to the lack of confidence, and creating that safe space for our own kids.
Absolutely. Now, some of the stuff that you talked about was the equity issues. What kind of equity issues do you feel our youth is facing in now? And what can we do about it?
There's a lot. Equity issues exist. They begun at a very young age as well. It is the type of, what communities that we live in, what type of jobs, what type of healthcare we have access to, how is our community looked upon, is the religious bias and the discrimination that exists, the anti-blackness, or the sort of the rising hate of people of color in the societies that we live in. So there's a lot of toxic things that are happening, and our youth are experiencing that, and sometimes they don't know how to react to that. Sometimes their reactions might be negative, or sometimes they shut out, or it hurts, it damages their self-confidence. So if you look at, for example, particularly the equity issues that exist in our in the education system, right? One, we come from families, we have parents, or we have live in a community that one does not understand that educational process, the system, right? And they're not being invited at the table. And oftentimes, what I tell people is, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu, right? So we don't have people in our own community that are serving on advisory boards, that are working in these schools, that are principals or assistant principals, or basic even teachers at the school, let alone being a school superintendent, or being elected to the board of education. So number one, we don't understand the policy, and we don't understand the impacts that it has on our kids. Number two, we don't have a basic understanding of the curriculum that is being taught to our children, right? So these curriculum, is it good for our kids? Is it really helping them in their social, their academic development? Is it really giving them an equitable chance to go to college, right? Understanding that low income families go to low income schools. And when you go to low income schools, you have low income teachers, right? So understanding that the outcome there is not going to be the same in a school district or a zip code where you have access to the top notch teachers, high tech class, a facility, textbooks, and curriculums that are approved by parents themselves, by the parent associations. They are well aware of what is being taught to their children, how it's being taught, right? And how it's beneficial to their kids' educational well-being. So all of those things exist as barriers. In addition to that is the support system that our kids have at home. They're being assigned homework that they may not have availability in terms of a mentor, a tutor, or someone to help them with that assignments, right? So oftentimes I really do see this, and it's so sad. I see kids who are going back to school and they're falling back and back because they're being assigned assignments that are well beyond their reading comprehension, their critical thinking about that particular topic, and they don't have the resources at home. Another thing is that, and you don't see this in school districts that are where parents are really involved. You have a kid that comes from Somalia. He's, let's just say he's 16 years old, right? Doesn't have the basic ability to read and write. Now he's thrown in a class where he's in class with his peers that went through kindergarten or they went through preschool, and they're reading or writing or up to standard, or even exceeding, right? So that kid is already left out in class and he feels that impact. So he already has a mentality that this is too hard. You will never understand this. And the kids that are your age are, are doing way better than you. So they keep falling back. Not even though they might make it to the next grade, emotionally they're traumatized by how far that they are back. So, and now you have in school districts who are looking at all those equity issues, understanding that, okay, you're a newcomer, you're an immigrant, right? We're not going to put you in these advanced classes. We're going to put you in classes that work on your basics. So by the time you're advancing throughout the grade level, you're at least aware, and you're able to keep on. So a lot of those equity issues exist in other things as well. Having access to halal food, right? Having access to teachers that are culturally competent. We have teachers that are teaching our kids with implicit bias and sometimes microaggressions against our own children, not because they're not aware. Why do you have to go pray? Why are you wearing this hijab? Right? Sometimes you have teachers that might feel like the hijab is oppression, right? And they make that child or that girl feel like something is wrong with her because she's wearing the hijab, and there's other, girls in class that are not, right? Those cultural dynamics, how our teachers are interacting with our students because they're spending 8 hours or sometimes more at school. It shapes them in how they navigate through the system and how they're able to really have access to academic success. So there's a lot of issues that exist, and we need to be more involved. We need to understand the system. We need to think outside the box, and sometimes bring our community willpower together to open our own school districts or our own charter schools or whatever the case might be, because it is something that is that is going to help us survive in this system.
Yeah. You touched on a lot of stuff there that I know our listeners will benefit from. And one of the things that we always talk about is the inability to represent ourselves within the school district, right? How, like you said, if you're not on the table, you'll be on the menu. And if we are not aware of what's happening in schools, let alone helping our children at home with their homework, I truly believe if we are engaged, and we can just do things like volunteering and being in schools and being on the school trustee board, volunteering, doing things that will also, not collaborate, but not only engage, but actually have the awareness of what's happening, have the understanding of what's happening. We can't truly get the whole picture when we are not engaged. We can't get the whole picture if we are not in there. We will be outside and everything, decisions will be made, things will be made, policies will be changed, and we are not even aware of it, let alone understanding how the curriculum works. So I truly believe even for us as parents, for those who actually are able to do volunteering and, participate in any activities in schools. So you are there, the teachers, the schools see that you're actually present. And it makes a huge difference because you're getting that close connection with what's happening in schools.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Parent engagement is critical. It's important because you're informed of what is happening, and if something that is affecting your child, you are aware of it, and you could help mitigate those issues that your child is dealing with, and also understanding that we as a community we can't all be doctors and nurses. Uh, our community has already enough access to people in those particular fields. We need to understand that there are other fields of study. We need teachers, we need educators, we need public safety officials. There are so many issues that our communities are faced with, and we as a Somali community, we're it's like we have tunnel vision. It's like, oh, I want my child, or I want them to be a doctor or an engineer. Understanding that there are many other fields that are high paying jobs, that are very rewarding jobs, but also that are filling the gaps for our community. So I think that sense of curiosity is something that also our community needs. We need to enlighten our kids to understand that they could be whatever they want in life, as long as that they're being productive, as long as that they're engaged members in society, they are contributing, members of our society. But most importantly, understanding that not everyone has to be in that health field, and that is something that I see our community. If you're not a nurse, if you're not a doctor, an engineer, you're a failure in our community. Um, and then we complain about our kids being in drugs. We complain about mental health issues. We complain about the relationship that we have with government or police department. And then I ask them, well, how many people in our community are police officers? Or how many people are mental health practitioners? Or how many people are you're complaining about, the school, our kids are failing or whatever. How many teachers do we have in the school? How many counselors do we have? So I think we as a community, the more we expand into getting into so many other career pathways, the better outcome and the less equity issues that we have in our own communities.
I actually 100% agree with that, actually. Just like you said, there's so many in our community in the healthcare department, and that's really good. But there's so many areas, especially, we have this stigma, right? And I think that's one of the things that parents actually hold their children from exploring some of the other careers, because there's stigma associated with it, right? I've worked in the hospitality industry for many years, and I know there's stigma around it. A girl cannot work in a hotel, but hotel, it's huge. There's so many different departments. There's accounting, there's, management. There's so many different positions that, I don't have to work as a waiter. Nothing is wrong as a waiter, but association with certain industries also has limited our youth from pursuing the profession. Even as a police officer, firefighter, there's association with stigma when it comes to that. How do we empower parents to enable to just let go of the stigma, let go of the fear associated with some of the industries out there?
Sometimes it's hard. Because they have once again, they have a different lived experience. Their minds are still back home in Somalia, and the type of career paths that Somalis had over there sort of dictates what is success. No one has really thought about, well, how do you define success? And if you define success in these terms, they may not be the same terms as I define as success. I give you one, for example. I told, outside of education, I also work in national security. And this is one of the most taboo things in our community, right? People I had people that come up to me and say, hey, are you FBI? I'm like, no, I'm not. But if I had the chance, that's a really great career, right? So people, they have these, what you see in movies or the perceptions that you have, people working in government is completely different, right? I've worked in homeland security. I've worked in counterterrorism. I've worked in all of these things because I knew it was a gap in our community. And I say this because I've seen on the news and I've seen how our communities reacted. Some of our youth who have been, for example, recruited back home to fight for Al-Shabaab or to go fight for ISIS. These things exist. Youth in our community actually left Some, have been killed in battle in places that they have no business in going to. But we're so fearful about this particular topic, right? That we don't want to touch it, we don't want to talk about it, but we want to complain about it, right? So I've taken the time to get, myself to learn about the dynamics of national security, what it means, how do you practice it, what is the policy component of it, and that's actually what I teach at San Diego State University. I teach prevention of extremism, right? So I've taken it upon myself to work with the community in educating them about these ideologies that exist, right? How does recruitment happen? In what platforms do they happen? Internet literacy, right? So there's a lot of kids that are have dealing with mental health issues, right? And they come in touch with the wrong person over the internet, and next thing you know, they're on a flight to somewhere that they're not supposed to be, right? So it took me a while. I had people that called me names, I had people that called me things, right? But I the work needs to continue because our kids are being recruited.
Yes.
You left Somalia, your kids are going back to Somalia to fight. How destructive is that, right? So building that relationship with government, understanding what is the rules, what is the regulations, what how does this ideologies manifest, what are the recruitment tactics. So for the past 7 years I've been engaged in that, and the community is very much comfortable. I have parents that really thank me, kids that are were in gang, have really transitioned out of that, kids that were in substance abuse, kids that had really ideologies that were very concerning that their parents even knew about but they didn't know how to deal with, right? So once again, I went from an individual that people kind of felt uncomfortable with, but now parents are so comfortable, imams are so comfortable. Hey, Mohammed, we're dealing with this. We want you to, provide a workshop for us and how, what is the rules, what are the regulation, what does the law say about this? I had parents that come to me and said, hey, I'm very concerned about my son, his ideology. Like he's saying things that he never used to say. I'm kind of curious, who does he talk to? He's disengaged, right? He's more aggressive. So there's a lot of things. So we need people in every different field. In fact, I went to Somalia and I'm working with the Somali government on particularly this. If you go to Somalia, if I were to ask anybody, what is the biggest problem that Somalia has? It's security, it's safety.
Yes.
Do you know that any university in Somalia does not teach no degree in national security? And that is the biggest problem that the country has. Right? It's how we think about stuff. It's how we look at the long-term well-being of our communities, of our country, of our nation, of our survival in the system that we're living in right now.
Yes, absolutely. It's like you broke the barriers, and sometimes that's what it takes. Anything that is new to our community or that we fear, we gotta have somebody who's gonna break it. So you are opening doors for others. Basically, that's what you have done. And hopefully through that, there's gonna be those who you have worked with that you will inspire them to a point where they too can follow your path and make their own path through that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So let's talk about, I know we kind of went different path here. You talked about your school, and I know you're very passionate when it comes to education because I can see that. You talked about your school in Somalia. You have 300 students. Congratulations. I know it's not easy to build a school in a different country with all the policies and procedures and the background stuff that has to happen. How's that going for you?
It's going well. It's not it hasn't been an easy process, but it's been very rewarding. And if I take a step back, how this school came to be was, in 2011, for a lot of the Somalis that might be viewing this, we understand that Somalia went through a terrible famine in 2011, 2012, where we had a very terrible drought. So as a undergraduate student, I I kind of, reached out to my friends, my Ethiopian friends, Somali friends, Eritrean friends, and they said, hey, there's a drought famine that is affecting our region. How could we create awareness about it so people could, be inspired to make a contribution so they could help people, whatever the case might be. We didn't know how much it was going to sort of um, like blow up to be a full blown humanitarian effort. We started raising hundreds of thousands of dollars off of famine relief. People were really engaged. People were signing up. People were, writing checks. People were saying, "How could we help?" So much people were like, "Hey, we want to go there, right? We want to volunteer." Nurses, doc. It really inspired our campus community and other college campuses around the world, and really the Somali community, particularly in the state of Minnesota, Ohio, Seattle, San Diego, wherever Somalis live. So now I'm here. I'm this kid who's doesn't even have a bachelor's, and now he's managing all of this resources that people have invested in me to go and make a difference. So it was a very stressful time. But nevertheless, I went to Somalia, went to go deliver aid at Benadir Hospital. That's the hospital that I was actually born in. We provided, mosquito nets, vaccinations. We helped with the sanitation at the hospital, which was overwhelmed with deceased individuals. They didn't have freezers. It was just a very dark moment in Somali history. And that traumatized me as well. And I said, I don't want to do work in the humanitarian field. I thought, working in a UN capacity was fun, and wearing those, UN logos. And I said, yo, the reality on the ground, this is too much. I can't deal with this, right? I've seen children, infants that have lost their lives in front of my face. So I said, I can't do this no more. So it was on the flight back that me and my friend said, we don't want to do this no more. It's just too overwhelming. Um, but then we said we don't want to quit. So where can we have impact? And as we were on that flight, we said, well, we're students. You would have the greatest impact on other students. So let's go build a school. We know what students need. We know, the challenges that they have, and that would be a way for us to be connected with our home country, our region, to our people. And that is an area we have direct expertise in as well, because we're students. And we had this idea, so we came back to San Diego. We went back to campus, and we said, give an update to all of our people that were in support of us. And we said, we want to go build a school. This is the way that we're going to get people out of poverty, is through innovation, it's through enlightenment, and it's through having the ability to educate our future. And it turned into another big project. We started raising money again. This time faculty really got involved. We went back to Somalia. We did some research. We found a location which was safe, stable, for us. And we opened the only school in that actual state that is free. We didn't care what tribe you're in. We didn't care what your income was. We didn't care who you were. As long as you wanted to be a student in our school, you had access to it. And that's how we built our school. We talked to the villagers in that particular village, and we said, what do you want to name the school? And they said Horsed, which in Somali means like Harosa, or move forward or continue. And that's what it's called. It's called Horsed Academy. And we have, it's a K through 5. We have about like 312 students. And the Ministry of Education in Puntland is located in Puntland, Somalia. They did 2 years ago. They went around the schools. They did an assessment. They shut down a lot of schools because they weren't providing education. It was fraudulent. Other schools, they've, gave them approval to continue. For our school, our issue was capacity. Your school has too much students. Either you reduce them or you expand the school. So there was no way we were going to tell kids that, hey, no, you can't go to school here. So we said, well, we're just going to expand it. So currently it's under construction. Under phase two, we're expanding it to a middle school. And it's contributions all through my friends, some fraternities and sororities on campus that put it in their bylaws that they're forever going to sustain that school. Um, and just, good-hearted people that are making contributions. So we're nearly going to double the amount of students that we have, but it's going to be from K through 5 now to K through 8, and we're grateful.
You talked about education, empowering people to a point where they get away from poverty. And education is the best way to give somebody the key to actually success, to life. Without education, we know what life can be and what it can look like. I really wish you all the best. I'm so excited to see how you have turned education into something else, involving others. It's not usually easy to get involved, and let alone make commitment to actually moving forward to continue and support you in the work that you do. So I just want to say thank you for what you're doing, and empowering our community. The one thing I remember you said on the radio last time is that we have a duty to our roots. And I clearly see that, you going back to your roots, knowing that you do have a duty to empower people in your motherland. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And we have to, this is a obligation. And that's the way I really view it. Because if you look at Somalia, look at the history, the last, 30 years where I've never seen a peaceful Somalia. I was born, during the Civil War, and I have kids. So the thing is, will my kids at least see a peaceful Somalia? So whose responsibility is that? It's definitely not the elders. These are, half of them are even responsible for Somalia's destruction to begin with, right? So you look at Somalia, more than 70% are under the age of 30, right? What type of life are they going to have? All right. So I've always been an individual that have self-conscious. Even when I go on vacation and I'm at some resort or I'm at some beach, and I think about, man, imagine if this was Somalia. We got way better beaches. We got way better weather. We got way better food. You know what I mean? So I've always have this conscious mind of Somalia. And that's what I encourage for people to view Somalia of what it could be, right? Not what it has been or what it's currently is right now. And for a lot of our youth, I think they're in two different buckets. One bucket, they don't want to go back, period. They're like, nah, they've never seen it. They never were connected with it. And the other bucket is that they want to go back. But are they going to quit? Because when I went back, I felt like quitting. I'm like, oh, this is way too much people. And I'm like, this is definitely this country is cursed. I can't believe, it was very traumatizing. But I found another way to help my people. Right. So I have a lot of professional friends that are doctors, that are engineers, that are professors that went back to Somalia, and they came back running, and they're like, I ain't never going back.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
The reality exists. So for those that at least have an open mind that go back to Somalia, I want to say, don't quit, because it's not comfortable, but if you don't do it, who's going to do it?
I think one of the advice that I often give to anyone going back, I went to Hargeisa in 2017. I was there for 18 months. And the one thing is that when I went, I took off the expectation completely. I wasn't going there with an expectation of how I thought it would be. I just completely removed it. And I went there with I'm just going to be present, enjoy the people, enjoy the weather, enjoy the food, enjoy everything that is going to offer me. And then what is it that I have within me that I can give back, you know? And I was able to do that, whatever resources. And I think that's the only way we can go back with that open mind and say, okay, you know what, I'm going to go back, no expectations. I'm going to give what I have, the resources, the inner resources, the skills, anything that I have, just like you did, right? You never gave up. Whatever work that you're doing, you did it, it made huge impact, but you didn't quit. You know, you didn't quit. You came up with a different idea that served a different population, and you used your resources. And we all have that. We all have the resources. We all have skill set. We all have expertise. So if we can pull that together and use that to help others, I think that will be the best way we can make an impact.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And you know, Africa in general is a if you grew up, you know, like I did in the West, and you have, you know, the comfort that you have air conditioning, you have infrastructure, you have basic roads, you know, you have access to water, and when you go back, it's a culture shock, and you have to have a very strong mindset and emotional capability to say, I'm gonna leave San Diego. Like, you know how beautiful San Diego is. It's crazy, right? Or the communities that we live here in the U.S. and and now you want to start a whole different career in Somalia, where you're walking on the same sidewalk with camels or like a donkey and a truck, right? So it's yes, it's not comfortable, but at least the way I view it is like, well, it you know it's this is your country, this is your people. And for those that actually want to build wealth, right? Even though I'm not, you know, I'm not the best of like an entrepreneur, it's Somalia is where you want to be. It's so innovative. You can't imagine. Like when I was in Somalia, what really truly inspired me was I would eat at a restaurant or my hotel or whatever the case might be, and everything was paid through the phone and it was received instantly. That did not even exist in the US or no Western civilized country. And I'm like, there's a lot of there's a lot of creativity here, right? All we're missing is sustainable peace and a infrastructure for our people to launch their ideas and their innovation. So yeah, and I always encourage people like you could always have a career here, but don't lose sight of who you are. For me personally, I want to retire in Somalia. That is my goal. But understanding if I'm going to retire there, I got to get comfortable to the new realities that would exist on the ground, and also work towards and changing it, and not just complaining about it.
So I know last time when we talked, I asked you this question going back to you retiring there, and you said your goal is and your vision is to be what in Somalia?
The goal is I want to be president.
There you go. See,
Yeah,
you know what? And there's nothing wrong with that, right? Because just like you said, 70% are under 30 in Somalia. And I truly believe everybody if all the young youth, yeah, I see you are still youth, you're still youth, you're still young guy, you know, anyone under 40, I would say, has the ability to go back and make change. Take what you have learned and go back and pour it back to motherland. You know, even if you don't intend to stay there, go back and make an impact. Like for you now, you have made the intention to be the president, because now you know, as the president, you know that the changes that you want and you foresee for the future Somalia is within grasp, and you can do that as sitting in the office instead of waiting for somebody else to do it.
Yeah, you know,
you want to get the job done, you go do it yourself, right?
So you know what really inspired me is, you know, growing up, I've always wanted to be a leader. So I have always had that hat on. I've always seen myself as a leader. And I've really invested in myself in understanding diplomacy. I've done a lot of work with the U.S. State Department. I've traveled with U.S. ambassadors to places like Algeria, Germany, Belgium, on, Kenya, Niger. And I've seen, particularly, for example, when I went to Somalia, I've had the honor and the privilege to go visit Villa Somalia. I've talked to the former presidents, I've talked to ministers. Um, there's a lot of young people that are working in these ministries, whether it's the Ministry of Education, Ministry of Internal Affairs, Foreign Affairs, you name it. There's a lot of young people that are running these offices that are doing work. Where I've seen the challenge is the leadership and the philosophy, because as a leader, it's not necessarily you doing the job, it's putting people in the right positions, right? So they could have impact, so they could get the job done, right? You provide the overall strategic plan of how success might look like, right? And I think that is where Somalia, I think people want a good government. They want a sustainable government. They want access to an economy. They want safety. They want access to water and development and infrastructure. They want a beautiful country and beautiful people. But the leadership is not reflective of those values. And that is not only Somalia's problem, that is many war-torn countries that problem exists. So I encourage people, and I hope, as Somalia is going through elections right now, I hope there's just a massive wave of young people becoming members of parliament, and we just get rid of the older generation that have really stifled Somalia, I would say, into reaching its ability to be a really truly functioning country. So if there's any young person out there that is listening to this, I would really encourage, particularly in Somalia, take action to your own hands. Go get elected, get involved. Instead of, Somalia, everything is based on Qabil right now, tribe. We're not in that position to have, one man, one vote, a real democratic a process of election. But instead of your Qabil putting together this old head that has no vision for the country, you be that person that your Qabil puts in that position. At least you are the future for the country. So it's, in many ways, I see optimism. And in the reality, in many ways, you could be flabbergasted, you could be disgusted with all the stuff that is happening in Somalia. But I'm hopeful that at some point, we as the younger generation, those who have the more rightful, um, you know, um, I would say, right to be, the leaders of the country, because it impacts us the most.
Yeah, I have two more questions here, if you don't mind. One of the things that I find youth have struggled, even going back and staying back home, is that as disassociation with only the bad kind of youth are taken, so forcibly taken there. That can addis, right?
Mhm.
They're taken back there, not by choice, but because they have maybe run problems with the law. They have they haven't done what they were supposed to be or to do, basically, and they're running with the law. And the only option is to get them out of the country and take them back home. And oftentimes, and I've met a lot of youth when I was there, when I was in Hargeisa, and they have this bitter taste about the country because it was forced upon them, right? So they're not even enjoying the motherland. They're not enjoying being with the people and having engaged with them and do what they can and add what they have, right? Instead, they're doing whatever they were doing where they left. So no change there. What would you say to the youth who are in that similar situation? And what advice would you give to the parents who just go and dump their kids there and leave them?
The the advice I would say is, please do not do that. It actually makes the situation worse. And I've done the research. I've actually worked with the U.S. government, particularly the U.S. Embassy in Kenya, Nairobi. where there was a influx of Somali youth that were taken back to Somalia or Kenya as well, for rehabilitation. And now they're at the US Embassy saying, I'm an American citizen. I was forcefully brought here. I was abused. Some some girls, I'm not even some, a lot, I would say they have been raped, and molested, whatever the case might be. Whether it's true or not, that is a completely different case. But the reality is that we're sending kids that are smoking weed, for example, right, to Somalia, and now they have access to God, cocaine, any other thing, and an AK-47. Which one was worse, right? So this rehabilitation, nobody has done the research. I understand that the parents, that they're fed up with these kids, they want to teach them a lesson. They're really not coming from a negative perspective. Their idea is for this kid to go learn his language, to be disciplined, and really to understand that the benefits that they have here in this country, that they should be grateful to being in America. So I want them to go experience what it feels like to live in Somalia. But understanding that research shows it does not work. Forceful rehabilitation, I don't care whether it's in a third world country or a first world country, it simply will not work. It will make the situation worse, right? What is far better off for you is for your child, if he has drug issues or substance issues, to seek treatment here. You have access to hospitals, you have access to clinical psychology, you have access to therapy. None of that exists in Somalia. So you're making your child suffer more by going there, right? So another issue I want to also address that is within this umbrella is that the sense of when these kids or these youth, when they're messing up, when they're using drugs or they're in and out of jail, they have all these type of legal problems. There's also this mindset, oh, take him to Somalia, go get him haloguri, get him married, and Wudagaya is going to be better.
Yeah.
That is the most destructive and selfish thing I've ever seen. You and it happens all the time, and no one wants to talk about this. In fact, I've seen imams who are encouraging this to happen. It is so completely unfair. You have this kid who, or this, teenager or this sometimes adult who can't even take care of himself. He's in and off drugs. He has dealing with mental health issues. He's in and out of jail. And now you want to go marry him off to Gawar Somalia that has a bright future. And they're not even letting that girl know that this individual is it's concealed, yeah, that this person has all these issues, right? Now we've situated this young girl to have kids with someone who can't even take care of himself. And for the family, now you couldn't deal with this particular individual. Now you're dealing with kids that he has. Now you have more problem on your hands. So rehabilitation, this person is going to get off drugs, he's going to be better because all of a sudden he's married. I don't know where this philosophy come from. It never works. There is not a single case where someone who is a complete, knucklehead that went back home and got married and all of a sudden became pious and, whatever the case might be. Who came up with this idea? It's only making the situation worse. So if you're a parent out there, stop. Don't do that. If your kid has substance issues, if he's smoking weed, doing drugs, do not take him back home, because now he doesn't have the support structure there. He doesn't. In fact, he has access to more lethal drugs without consequences, right? So utilize the healthcare that exists here, right? Take your son to clinical psychology to seek mental health support, to go to drug addiction treatment centers, to go through programs. All of these things are within your disposal, and it doesn't cost you nothing if you basically have access to free healthcare. But you're taking them because he's doing drugs. Now he's chewing thought. Now he's involved. he might have been involved in a local gang here, but now potentially he's involved in an international terrorist organization. So think about all of that negativity. And it's not just who's going to get better. It doesn't work like that.
You know, you actually, I'm so glad you actually mentioned that, you know, and oftentimes is parents are in denial. They're in denial. They don't want to say this is what's happening, and they cover it up, right? And you just touched on it, on something that I know a lot of parents run away from, they shy away from. It's easier to deport him, send him somewhere else than to deal with it and see for what it is and seek help, seek medical help, you know? So I truly hope that parents who are listening to this video today or audio, I truly hope that you'll be able to pick something from this message today, because I know some of us are actually guilty of that. We don't want to face the truth, and we deny our children the right way of help and support. And then instead we send them away, and another family, we burden them with our own problems. So I'm glad you touched on this, because I saw this firsthand when I was there, you know, young girl getting married to a family, to a guy she has no clue, you know, or she's from Canada, or he's from North America. Little does she know his background.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's not fair. In fact, it's so unethical. And once again, you know, we as Somali people, one of the biggest problems I've seen in Somalia is that everyone is an expert. You will not come across someone who's Somali who simply says, "I don't know." And that's a challenge. Someone is going to convince some parent, or it's like, wow, that is so unfair, not only to her but also to him, to the entire family. And then someone will tell, parents have this, mindset. Someone even tell you,
yeah,
it's sad. So let's look at the data. Let's look at the success rates. Let's look at all of that stuff. And that kind of Somalia, we know this is not going to work out. But for some reason, in the other, we're going to be like, no, we're going to do it.
Yeah.
And then we get mad when the outcome is not.
It's facing the reality. I truly believe it's facing the reality, and most of us don't want to face the reality, because the reality is painful. It's going to work. It needs some work, and we don't want to put in the work.
Yeah.
It comes down to that. Yeah. I really enjoyed talking to you today. You know, I truly believe that I think there's another episode that we can come and talk about this. This video is going to be actually part 2. So I'm going to split the video into 2 because I know we kind of stretched it. I know you talked about your school. I know you talked about the work that you do where you are right now. What is the plan now? What are your plans now? I know you're running for president as well. How's that going? Well, in the university. How's that going for you?
No, it's it's a process. I think for at least in my career here in the U.S., my next goal, I want to be a college president, a university president. I'm positioned in a at a really good institution. You know, my boss, the president of the university, is also my mentor. I serve on the president's cabinet, so now developing those top-notch leadership skills where I could position myself, to apply for these positions, so I could lead the institution myself. So, the way I'm progressing, I would give it, max 3-4, years where I could be a very strong candidate in leading a educational institution myself. So that is my goal. It's not easy work, but I don't like, if I put my mind to it, I'm gonna find a way to get it done. It's there's just no if and buts. It's like, find a way to get it done. That is the one thing that my mom has instilled in me. She says, find a way to get it done. And the way to get it done is to be focused, to have a strategy, and hope. But hope is not strategy. So, putting that strategy together and making sure that whatever we set our minds to, that it's doable. If we put a man on the moon, we could achieve anything on this earth. That's the way I feel about it.
Yes, there's nothing that we are limited to. Anything and everything is possible. And I truly believe, I think that because how your mom brought you and the belief that she had, for you, that helped you. I love that attitude, anything is possible and I'm going to work on it. I'm going to find a way. And I think that helped you also from your school, going back when you're in grade 7, going back all the way to university, and now working towards being a president at the university in the next 3-4 years. I can see the focus, and I can see that you not only focus, but you know exactly what you want and you're actually going for it. But the other thing you touched on is you have a mentor. And this is one of the areas I know we lack. We are not surrounding ourselves with people who will guide us. We are not aligning ourselves with people who are going to guide us in that path, the direction that we want to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, the mentorship component is critical, because you need to position yourself in a circle of friends, of people that could guide you to the next level. Islamically, even religiously, you are who your friends are.
Yeah.
That's the reality. So for me, if you want to achieve anything, you have to go find people. And it's a lot easier right now with social media. We have access to social media, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, right? On a monthly basis, I'm like sending out, LinkedIn messages to all, like, as much as college presidents that I can, right? Given that I want to be a college president.
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying, hey, I am, this is who I am. I've, done, some research. I'm very impressed by your leadership. I want to be a college president like you. I was wondering if you could have some time, or you could give me some pointers and tips, right? Some would get back to you, some won't, but those that come, get back to you, you got to, find a way to be in touch, to understand, what is working for them, what is not working for them, the best times to apply for these positions, what type of institutions are looking for your own, your type of leadership, because individuals have different sets of leaderships, and universities are looking for different types of leadership. Sometimes they want a president that have a lot of expertise in raising money, right? Some leaderships are, universities are looking for people that have academic, leadership, because, they want to enhance their school academics, right? Some are looking for that community connection, right? That they have access to all of that, but you want a president that takes them deeper into the community, or whatever the case might be. So it's just, you have to do the research in anything that you want to be. And if you want to be that, you have to understand somebody already became it before you.
Yes.
More than likely. So you have to go find those people as well. And you're going to have challenges. You're going to have people that are not going to believe in you. I've reached out to people that I thought could potentially be mentors, and they did the opposite. And I said, well, kick rocks. On to the next one, right? Yeah, so just be very strategic in what you do. That is my advice.
So one last question. How do you deal with, like, now you talked about you reaching out to people and sometimes they turn you down, or the people you expect, you would hope would be there to support you and help you, they're actually the ones who turn their back on you, right? What do you say to those individuals who have been heartbroken or disappointed to a point so much so they feel like, if this person could not help me, what's the point?
Don't ever think like that. First of all, Hasbi Allah wa ni'mal wakil. That is the one thing you have to understand, right? That anything that you want to achieve in this life and in the hereafter, it comes from Allah. So if you have that, anybody else becomes nothing to you, right? I'm not saying just believe in Allah and sit on your hands. That's not That's not the idea here, right? The first idea is your biggest supporter is the one that has created you because he gave you life to begin with, right? So one, have the trust in him, and two, hustle. You know, a door closes, another one would open. Sometimes a door closes, another one is not going to open. You're going to have to break into one. That's just the reality. It's the mindset that you have, right? For me personally, if I really look at my career, um, I've worked in so many different fields. I would say 80% of the jobs and careers or things that I've done, I did not apply. I created them myself. I pitched ideas of jobs that I want to have. Even when I was at San Diego State, right? The position that I had over there, it did not even exist. I got in touch with the president and I said, this is a gap that the university is missing, and this is a skill set that I have. And he offered me a position that did not even exist, right? So use your creativity, right? People will inspire you and people will discourage you. But for you, it's your responsibility to understand and what is going to break you. Because in life, nothing should break you, especially if you're Somali, or if you're from an immigrant refugee background. You've already seen the worst that you could see. All of this stuff is not going to be a setback for you. It's going to be your asset. It's going to be your driving. It's going to be, the thing that drives you and motivates you. If you believe in yourself, um, that is the best thing that you can do for yourself, is to believe in yourself.
Yes, believe in yourself and believe in the process, right?
Mhm.
That door that you think, because it's all perception, the door that you think was shut was actually maybe not the right door for you.
Yes.
A better
And,
door will open up,
and,
I can attest to that. Just like people who I thought would be there to support me and encourage me and open those doors for me were those who actually closed the doors for me. But guess
uh-huh.
what? 10 other doors opened up. So sometimes the one we think is the right one, maybe it's not the right one for us at that time. Maybe there's
Exactly.
something better. Actually, there is something better that will come
Yes.
up that's along the way, because that is not the right one for you. Any
Yes.
last words?
I would say, um, last words, I would just share with your audience is that, um, be count your blessings, mentally and emotionally. You don't want to start off in going down, a road where you have a deficit mindset. It is very, it could be very traumatic, right? So what you want to do is anything you want to achieve. If you want to set new goals, it's new year goals you want to achieve, whatever the case might be, focus on the things that you do well, things that are the skill sets that you are most happiest with, right? Don't think about the things that you're not able to do, the things that you're not good at, because if you start to focus on that, you're not you won't be emotionally mentally prepared to even lift your finger, right? So whatever it is that you're doing, look at the things that you are doing, positive things that are working for you, the skills that you have that nobody else, that are solely unique to you. Dig in deeper to that. Appreciate, have self appreciation. Once you have a healthy mindset, then you're able to go far and far into achieving what do you want to achieve. So don't let others, and this is something that is very, destructive, that our kids are being taught, that are being consumed, whether it's news, media. When we go to school, 70% of black kids are going to end up in jail. It's like, if a kid is reading that, you have already traumatized his future, right? So, oh, the likelihood of you becoming this, none of that exists. All of this research about you potentially failing and not achieving is all BS. It does not exist. Allah has created you to achieve greatness. You know what I mean? So understand that, count your blessings, look towards what is working for you rather than what is not working for you. Because if you have self appreciation, then you'll only able to overcome things that are need to be better in your life, that you need to overcome.
That's so beautifully said. We tend to meet people who also will try to undermine our abilities, and that's just exactly what you talked about. I know we didn't talk about when you were, was it a guidance counselor who actually undermined your abilities? Do you mind just because I know you just touched on that right now, and maybe we can tie that together for those who are listening in, when your guidance counselor undermined your ability.
Yes, absolutely. So, it's one of those things that was really what put fire in my belly, I would say, to go and earn these degrees that I do have. And it's basically, I was in 11th grade. This is, the year where you typically start applying for colleges before your senior year, or at least start taking your examinations for college preparation. And I asked my counselor, I said, hey, can I get a fee waiver, um, which was a fee waiver that allows you to take your ACTs without paying a fee. It was around, I'm not sure, $67 or $70 or something around that, under $100 for a student. And I didn't have that money. And she kind of like put it, pinned it in my chest and said, in front of my peers, in front of, kids I was in class with, my friends, and said, don't waste it, because I know you're not going to college. You'll end up as a cab driver. Um, and that was, you know, that was really my fire for me to say, oh, okay, I'm gonna go to college. Watch me. And I didn't go to college really to, prove her wrong, but for someone never to disrespect me like that ever again. And to have, self-worth and saying, no, you might think I'm not going to go to college, but I'm going to college not to prove you wrong, but to make, to make my life better, and to do this for my parents. And I'm proud to say that I've, for every college that I applied to, I got accepted, got my bachelor's, got my master's, got my PhD, became a professor, and now on the verge of leading, to becoming, hopefully becoming a college president. All of this was someone who said, you're not able to do it. And my mindset was, oh, I'm going to do it. Watch me. So, and, and sometimes it could be your own family members. It could be your own relatives. It could be your own friends. It could be your own circle. It doesn't have to be someone that is far distant, right? But the most dangerous person to let you down or say you can't do nothing is actually yourself, I would say. So always have the mindset, I'm gonna do it. If this way didn't work, I'm gonna find another way. And it's all a test from Allah. He's gonna put you on a path. The door closes. He's testing you. Are you gonna pivot? What are you gonna do? Are you gonna quit? Are you gonna walk back? Or are you gonna say, use the brain and the capacity that Allah gave you to say, oh, okay, I'm gonna find another way to achieve this. So whatever you set your mind to it, inshallah, all of you are gonna succeed in it. It's not gonna be easy. Anything that is worthwhile is gonna be very tough, to achieve. So count your blessings, never give up. Always also give back to others. And remember, even if you have your back against the wall, even if you feel like no one here is to support you, to encourage you, remember that you have the most special one, and that's the one who created you, that is rooting for you.
Yes, absolutely. And be your own cheerleader, right?
Mhm.
So oftentimes our family, friends will not get us, will not understand us, will not understand the journey that we're taking. And we shouldn't expect them to, right? So just be your own cheerleader and believe and trust in the process and trust the one who created you. I love that. Thank you so much. It's been a wonderful, having you here on the show and conversing with us, taking your time, precious time with us. I look forward to having you again on the show. I really appreciate and honor you for the work that you do.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you to all the future listeners who are going to be watching this very important program. I wish you the best, fadhwa. Thank you for all that you do for the community. Thank you for sharing all of these beautiful stories and uplifting our communities through these conversations. they mean a lot. And that is the best way to really touch a person, is to share something positive with them. So thank you for providing that platform.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, everyone, I really hope you enjoyed. Until then, please subscribe to our channel, The Gems of Life Show. You can also listen to our CKMS Radio 102.7 FM Radio Waterloo every Friday at 6 p.m. You can follow me every Monday and listen live to my show as well. I'll have all the links on my YouTube channel. Please subscribe, like, comment, and share The Gems of Life Show. Till then, aspire to inspire everyone. Take care, stay well and safe.